All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we're going to talk about how the prohibition has been going on in the 1920s and basically how that gave birth to organized crime like the mafia and gangs and things like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So, here is your warm up picture. Now, if you notice in the bottom corner, the little person there, it says on the back of him the law. So think about law enforcement, local, state, federal, right? And if you notice that big, giant, tall dude who says organized crime, right? Yeah, if you notice, the cop is shooting his gun at him. And look at the big guy. Does he look phased? Does he look hurt or injured or anything like that? So with that in mind, the question's asking you, what is this artist trying to say about, you know, the cops and organized crime? Okay. So think about it, write your response, because we're moving on in three, two, one. So here's the thing. At the 1920s, prohibition has already started. Okay, if you remember from a couple weeks ago, we talked about how uh, a lot of people in America wanted the alcohol to be illegal, and that's why they created the 18th Amendment because they felt that alcohol was a cause for a lot of problems in the United States. It was the devil's drink. Nothing ever good comes from alcohol and stuff like that. Which, in the sense, they did have some points because people did, especially guys, drank a lot back then, and they did spend their money, gamble it away, things like that. So, they, in a sense, they did have a point. But to say that if all things bad were about alcohol, if we got rid of it, things would be hunky dory. Well, here's the thing, as you're going to find out, it wasn't hunky dory. Federal and local governments had struggled to actually enforce it. It's one thing to make it illegal, it's another thing to make sure that people are following the law and to make sure that nobody is making it, transporting it, or selling it. The other big problem was that the federal government, they weren't prepared for it. you know, they didn't know how to handle the problem. So basically, they're like, okay, well, who's going to be in charge of making sure that alcohol is illegal, that we enforce the laws, and that people are checking? So they went to the IRS first, the Internal Revenue Service. These are the guys who basically make sure that the government gets their tax money and things like that. Um, these guys are not field agents, really. They're more bookworms, they or accountants and things like that. So to have these guys go out there and try to find these distilleries and things like that wasn't a smart thing. So then it transferred to the Justice Department. Okay, so it's like, okay, now they're realizing, okay, IRS was a bad idea, Justice Department. Okay, so these guys, okay, so there's more guys out there doing this stuff. And then finally, the government creates a program of people just for alcohol. It's called the Prohibition Bureau. Okay. Now, the rules were stricter in rural countries. That means small towns. Okay. So, like I said in class, I'm here in this town called Tulare. It's pretty small, compared to places like Fresno, LA, San Francisco, some of that. So it was a lot easier for these guys to be tough and stern in these small towns. But in bigger places, bigger cities like LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Sacramento, some of that, um, they were a little bit looser. They weren't as able to get everyone, and they weren't able to really, so they weren't as much as enforcing it as much as small towns. Okay. Now, some people were known as bootleggers. These guys were the people who were making, transporting, or selling illegal liquor. So if you look at that picture up on top there, that's the reason why they call them bootleggers, because people would stick them in their boots, mainly ladies, because nobody really thought a lady would be a criminal carrying illegal alcohol. But yeah, they did. And like I said in class too, the alcohol, if you notice, the only bad thing about that picture is if you notice the bottle's like 2/3 full. There's that empty spot. And I was like, they would not be walking with that because, as you know, you may know, when you walk with a container that's like half open and you're walking around, it makes a particular noise that shh, because it's spilling. It's going. There's that air. It's just moving back and forth. You know. So what they would do is they would fill it to the top so that there was no air. So there was no way it could swoosh and make noise because it was packed inside the bottle. Okay. And it wasn't just one bottle they carried. I mean, they would try to fit as much as they can. Put it in their boots, put it around their waist, around the ribs areas, under the armpits. I mean, wherever they could stick it, put the bottles, they would do it. Okay. Uh use like tape or cloth and make a little tie around it so to hold the bottle, you know, and people would sell them, you know. That's how they were known as bootleggers. Now, let's say you wanted to go somewhere where the alcohol was. You don't want to meet somebody up, or by yourself at just a park somewhere. You wanted to go somewhere to drink. Well, there were places for you to go, and as you look at that bottom picture, those places were called speakeasies. Okay, a lot of the times these places were like under in basements, fruit cellars, things like that. And basically, some places they actually created like false walls. So like let's say there was a wall right here, right? They would make okay. Let me look at it better this way, like this. Let's say this is the wall right here. They would then like create another wall like over here. This is where the false walls was. And if somebody wanted to go in down to the basement area where the alcohol was, they had to go to this little door, a little contraction thing where somebody on the inside here in the middle part could see them and say, okay, you're cool. You're not the cops or thing like that. And then they would let them in and they can go down and have a drink, you know. So some people at this time too were like, you know what? I'm not gonna buy this alcohol from this person. I'm not gonna go to these speakeasies. I'd rather make the alcohol myself. So this is where people started making their moonshine, started making you know, their uh their own type of alcohol using fermented fruit and things like that. Um, some people like a student said in class, like prison wine. It's like, yeah, basically. So because alcohol was illegal too, um, and people wanted it, this is where the mafia and the crime syndicates really start to come into power. All right, so this is again, like I was saying, the mafia is starting to form. Now, if there's any one guy you should really know about, it's this guy right here in that picture. That is Charles Lucky Luciano. Okay, he was originally a gunman, right? And the thing is, Luciano realized like all these little gangs, mafias, people, they're killing each other over little things like this is our territory, this is our block, this is our place, and the only people who are, basically happy are the cops because these guys are killing each other off, trying to claim more territory, this and that. And he was like, well, why don't we treat it like a business? You know, we get together, we talk about things, come to an agreement, things like that. And this is where the crime syndicate starts. It's all because of him. He's the chairman. So he brings in the biggest five families and said, okay, let's negotiate. Let's talk about this. Because if we keep killing each other off, guess what? We're all going to be dead, arrested, So, but if we all work together, respect each other's territories, help one another out if we can, you know, then we all profit. We all do well. And it worked. And that's why the mafia was very successful for many, many years. The next biggest guy would be like Bugs Moran. Now, Bugs Moran, you really don't hear about him too much because he was the rival of this other guy named Al Capone, which most people have heard. We'll talk about him in a second. Another big guy was Dutch Schultz. Now, his real name was Arthur Flemingheim. Okay, but he changed his name and it sounds more intimidating. Dutch Schultz. But Dutch Schultz was a bootlegger. He made a lot of money on alcohol, but he later ran an illegal lottery racket, you know, and that's where he also got a lot of money, especially during the Great Depression. This next guy is probably one of the smartest guys when it comes to the mafia, besides like Luciano and so like that. And it's Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky was actually a Jewish gangster. You don't really hear too much about the Jewish gangsters, but he was one. And he was originally, before he was a burglar, liquor smuggler. He ran some rackets. And he was, like I said, very, very smart. And he, like Luciano, got together and stuff like that. And thing is, he created this group called Murder Inc., which is basically the people that the mafia would hire to kill people. And they would be like, well, how do you want it? Do you want them to shoot them, hang them, make it look like an accident, make it look like it was a legitimate hit? I mean, what do you guys want? You know. And Meyer Lansky is one of the very, very few mafia people who actually live to be an old age and does not get killed. And is neither on the run either. He's not hiding from the cops, kicked out of of a country or a state or whatever, hiding from other mobsters. No, he's actually like, I think like two or three guys who actually lives to be an old man and die of like natural causes, something like that. I can't remember how he died, but still, fact of the matter is he doesn't get killed or ran, pushed away. The next guy, however, does get killed. His name is Bugsy Siegel. Now, Bugsy Siegel was a bootlegger, an assassin, and he left like the New York East Coast area for Hollywood. Okay, and he Hollywood, they made movies about gangsters and this and that, and here's this real life gangster guys, and they're just like, oh my god, people just loved him. He loved the celebrities, so they got along really well. But what he's most famous for is he helped create this little town called Las Vegas. Yeah, and so later on, he does end up being killed. Okay. Now, the most famous of all these gangster guys was Al Capone, right? Other known name is Scarface. Okay. Now, thing is, Scarface Al Capone made about $60 million a year off bootlegging and speakeasies. So he was making hand over fist of money. And the thing is, because people saw that, oh my gosh, this guy's making millions of dollars, and this is money that the government doesn't know about, you know. Excuse me. No, actually, they do know, but they really can't do much about it. So gangs started popping off, and they're trying to take control of certain blocks and certain areas and things like that. And then again, it's not just one group thinking, "Oh, I want a piece of that." It's a bunch of people, bunch of groups, and this is where gangs and the mafia start clashing, and things like that. So what ends up happening on one day, on Valentine's Day, actually in 1929, um, Al Capone's rival, Moran's men, were at this place, right? Capone knew where they were. He had his men dress up as cops, right? Have a police car, things like that. They drove up, basically told these guys, "Hey, you're under arrest, for selling alcohol, things like that. Line up against the wall. Come on, this and that." So these guys are like, "All right, fine, whatever. We got arrested." So they're lining against the wall, and they're basically told, "Turn around." And when they turn around, they see just a bunch of these guys with some machine guns, Tommy guns, and just they just mowed them down. This became known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Okay, so this was something that hit the news everywhere, you know, and people were just like, "Oh my gosh!" Well, maybe it's just like a one-time incident. No, for the next several years, the violence keeps rising. Then all of a sudden, the mob starts raising the alcohol, the price of a beer, things like that. And people are like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! This bottle of beer is, you know, cost $2 last week. How come it costs six now? Hey, that's the way it is, buddy. Either you take it or you leave it. What's it gonna be? And they knew, hey, they can't storm the bar because that bar was controlled by people like Capone, who has no problem killing people. Especially if it's dealing with his money. Yeah. So, and what are they gonna do? Call the cops? Capone owned the cops. And even then, if they ran into another cop who wasn't owned by Capone, it's illegal. So what are you gonna do? You know, the number of gangs kept rising, and these guys are fighting each other for territory and some of that, and who's they're gonna sell alcohol to. Um, because of that too, the number of arrests, people being arrested for alcohol, selling alcohol, things like that, started to rise as well. And now the jails are packed, the prisons are packed. So now they have to create more jails and more prisons. And people started to, those people were like, oh, yeah, get rid of alcohol. It's going to be good for our country. Now that type of mentality, that, support for prohibition really starting to go away because people are starting to realize, like, maybe things weren't as bad. Maybe we made this whole thing with alcohol being bad and evil and things like that too much because look what's happening now. And then the Great Depression hit, and a lot of people um, basically were like, well, how come the government isn't doing anything? How come the government isn't helping people, giving people money, stuff like that? Well, the thing is, again, so many years without taxing the alcohol, the government doesn't have that money. So they really are limited as well, and some politicians are like, oh, maybe if we didn't get rid of alcohol, we would have tax money and then we could help people and some of that. So on the election of 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt ran on a platform of getting rid of prohibition. It's called repealing. Okay. And he easily defeated the guy up on top there. You see, that's President Herbert Hoover. And Roosevelt, the guy on the bottom, beat him. No problem. Okay. And in February 1933, Congress adopted the 21st Amendment, which made alcohol legal again. Okay. So it repealed the 18th Amendment. So, like I was saying in class, these are the only two amendments we have in our Constitution that basically cancel each other out. Now, like I told people in class as well, I'm going to tell you as well. The way you can always remember which one is to make alcohol illegal and which one makes it legal, think of it like an age. Okay. At 18, can you drink legally? No. So 18th Amendment makes alcohol illegal. At 21, can you drink legally? Yes. So 21, alcohol is legal. So that's the way I remembered it. It's a little trick. So if ever something happens and someone says, you're on a game show or whatever, or some contest or some contest on the radio, and they say which one, or what is the 18th Amendment? Call in and you get a prize or whatever. Just remember, I get half. All right, so I don't mind seeing concerts and things like that. So just saying. Okay, so remember, 18th, alcohol illegal. 21st Amendment, alcohol legal. So by the end of the year, three-quarters of the states ratify it. They're like, yeah, let's just make this official. Let's make alcohol legal again. But there were some states who were like, no, 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 we don't want alcohol legal. We want to keep it illegal. And then the government's like, well, that's your choice. As a state rights, you get to make alcohol illegal. But the rest of the country, we're making it legal. Okay. And I want to say the last state to make alcohol illegal, I want to say it was Utah, and that was in 1966. All right, guys. So that's basically the end of this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. With that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. All right.